The last letter. In the quiet town of Elmsworth, where autumn's gold and red leaves danced through the cool air, lived a young woman named Evelyn. Her life, once filled with the vibrant colors of joy, had been dimmed by a tragedy that no one, least of all she, could have foreseen. Evelyn had been in love. Her heart belonged to a man named Thomas, a passionate, kind-hearted artist who had moved to the town several years before. He was the kind of person who made everyone feel seen, heard, and loved. Together, they had shared countless moments of happiness, late-night walks through the woods, conversations under the stars, and laughter that seemed to echo forever in the quiet of the town. But life, as it often does, had its own plans. Thomas had always been prone to illness, though he hid it from those who cared about him. He would take long walks along the lake to clear his mind, always smiling, always pretending. Evelyn had no idea that the love of her life was battling a silent war within his own body. One cold winter morning, Thomas didn't show up at the usual cafe where they always met for their morning coffee. Evelyn, after waiting for an hour, began to grow worried. She rushed to his small, cozy cottage on the edge of the town. Her heart pounded as she knocked on the door, each second stretching longer than the last. There was no answer. She tried the door. It was unlocked, just as Thomas always left it when he went out. Stepping inside, she was greeted by a silence so deep, it felt unnatural. She moved through the darkened halls, calling out his name, but the only sound was her own voice echoing back. She found him in his studio, the place where he created his masterpieces. He had been painting when his heart finally gave into the strain. His brush was still in his hand, his last stroke unfinished. Thomas had passed away quietly in the place he loved most, surrounded by his art. Evelyn collapsed beside him, her tears falling freely. She held his cold hand in hers, wishing she could turn back time, wishing she had known, wishing she could have done something. The town mourned Thomas' passing, but none more than Evelyn. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. The seasons changed, but Evelyn remained the same, trapped in a world where Thomas' absence loomed large, a presence that filled every corner of her life with sorrow. She stopped going out, stopped visiting the places they used to go. Her friends, though well-meaning, could not reach her. The grief had turned her into someone she didn't recognize, a shell of the woman she used to be. And then, one day, she found something that stopped her in her tracks, a letter, folded neatly, addressed to her. It was in Thomas' handwriting. With trembling hands, she opened it. My dearest Evelyn, if you are reading this, it means I am no longer with you. I am so sorry, my love. I wish I had more time to show you just how much you mean to me, to tell you how much I cherish every moment we spent together. I never wanted you to hurt. Please know that leaving you was the hardest thing I have ever done. But you must live, Evelyn. You must carry on. I know it's hard. I know it feels like the world has collapsed, but there is so much more for you. There is a life waiting for you outside of the pain. I want you to find happiness again, even if it's without me. Promise me this, you'll never forget how loved you are. You are stronger than you know. And when the time comes, I will always be with you, in every memory, in every laugh, in every quiet moment you share with someone who loves you. I love you, Evelyn, always and forever. Yours, Thomas. ****. Evelyn sat still for what felt like an eternity, the letter clutched to her chest, her heart both breaking and mending in equal measure. Thomas had loved her until the very end, and even in his absence, he was still asking her to live, to find happiness once more. But how could she? How could she live in a world without him? Days passed as Evelyn wrestled with herself. She kept reading the letter over and over, each time finding new meaning in his words. Slowly, the fog began to lift, if only a little. She began to remember who she was before Thomas came into her life, the person who laughed freely, the woman who once had dreams and hopes beyond her love for him. Thomas had been her everything, but she realized now that she couldn't let his death define the rest of her life. She had to move forward, not because she was forgetting him, but because he had wanted her to. His love had been a gift, and it was up to her to honor it by living a full life, even without him by her side. Months turned into a year, and though Evelyn would never fully heal, she began to find solace in the little things. She started painting again, something Thomas had always encouraged her to do, and found herself lost in the colors and textures of her own creations. She spent more time with her friends, allowing them to help her rediscover the joy she had once known. But most importantly, she learned to smile again, not because the pain was gone, but because she had learned to carry it without letting it crush her. One spring afternoon, while walking through the now blooming gardens near Thomas' old cottage, Evelyn sat by the lake, watching the ripples dance in the sunlight. She closed her eyes and whispered to the wind, "I'll never forget you, Thomas. And I will live. For both of us." And though he was gone, she could feel his presence, not in the painful memories of loss, but in the quiet strength that had blossomed within her heart. She knew that one day, when her time came, she would join him again, but for now, she had a life to live, a life he had given her the strength to continue. The wind carried her words, and somewhere, perhaps in the breeze, Thomas smiled. The end. This story attempts to encapsulate the deep sorrow of loss and the delicate, painful journey of healing. It is a tale of love that transcends death, urging the protagonist to live fully again despite the weight of her grief.